Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. This video is about Ezekiel 17. 2 eagles and a vine. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set forth an allegory and tell it to the Israelites as a parable. So set forth an allegory and tell it to the Israelites as a parable. And another version of this, right, says that God is telling them to set forth a riddle, right, or an allegory and tell it as a riddle. And that goes back to the idea of the Riddler in the comic books and popular culture. This is key here because the whole Bible is like an allegory, like a riddle, like a parable. And you have to understand the obvious. In life, if you do the right thing, it's smart, right? If you do what is absolutely right. If you don't, it's foolish. And when you don't, it has all kinds of adverse effects. The consequences that you endure when you do the right thing, with everything considered, are much more, much easier to deal with than if you do than the consequences of doing the wrong thing. And so that's a huge part of the Bible, where they're telling it in a way that's like a riddle, and people are interpreting it various ways. Some people think that they should interpret it within the boundaries of, something stupid like white supremacy, Jewish supremacy, or some kind of racial supremacy. Some people try to twist it for the LGBT agenda or other political agendas, MAGA, what have you. But it's, first and foremost, the Bible is a book of stories with one greater moral, right? There's the golden rule, the greatest commandment. That's like the moral of the story, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love God with all your being. Love your neighbors yourself. And within the boundaries of what's righteous, right? Love them by telling them the truth. Love them by rebuking them when they're doing the wrong thing, things like this. And your neighbor isn't just who lives next door. You might not know them very well. Okay? Your neighbor it can be like anybody, really, to make a long story short. So this chapter is a little bit tricky because it's specifically an allegory that's being told as a parable or a riddle. And so you need to understand that the moral of all these chapters is to come into the divine order. Don't cheat the most righteous person ever lived out of his right to lead. That's me. Don't cheat the spirit of the righteous. Don't cheat God. Obviously, don't cheat God first and foremost. Okay, that's always the moral. And God is known and is exalted by his acts of righteousness and justice. So you know what God would have you do if it's right. I can't stress that enough because a lot of people want to argue about how this is explained. I've had Jews and white people and people like that, gay people. They tell me that they're mad because I'm not explaining it in a way that puts them above other races and me specifically. I mean, people aren't really that sick. You would think that that's not what they're doing, but they literally teamed up to reinforce the psychotic and sick pre-existing social orders, order and orders in society. I mean, that is crazy. To do that in 2025 is worse than doing that in Nazi Germany. Hitler did not kill as many people as these old money families that are in charge right now, and their offspring are in their spirits, so on and so forth. I mean, these people are insane. They are Luciferians through and through. They are Satanists. They are monsters. And they are absolutely interpreting in a way that is very deranged, demented, sick, very loathsome. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. A great eagle with powerful wings, long feathers, and full plumage of various colors came to Lebanon, taking hold of the top of a cedar. He broke off its topmost shoot and carried it away to a land of merchants where he planted it in a city of traders. He took one of the seedlings of the land and put it in fertile soil. He planted it like a willow by abundant waters. And it sprouted and became a low-spreading vine. Its branches turned toward him, but its roots remained under it. So it became a vine and produced branches and put out leafy boughs. But there was another eagle with powerful wings and full plumage. The vine now sent out its roots toward him from the plot where it was planted and stretched out its branches to him for water. It had been planted in good soil by an abundant water so that it would produce branches bear fruit, and become a splendid vine. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Will it thrive? Will it not be uprooted and stripped of its fruit so that it withers? All its new growth will wither. It will not take a strong arm or many people to pull it up by the roots. It has been planted, but will it thrive? Will it not wither completely? When the east wind strikes, it wither away in the plot where it grew. Okay, so let's stop here. So there's these two eagles, right? One of them comes first. Okay. It takes this shoot and carries it away to a land of merchants, right? Babylon's a land of merchants. Okay, and Ezekiel's been talking about Babylon. So therefore, the first eagle is probably Babylon, right? Babylon is an eagle that symbolizes it, right? We're not in the era of the Greeks yet. We're in the era of the Babylonians. They're having, a lot of problems related to Babylon. They're worried about this, that, and the other thing relative to Babylon. Okay, now they've been relying on Egypt. So the second eagle is Egypt. Now, how do I know this? I know this because I read the chapter already. And I've read it through Ezekiel up till the parts where it talks about building the temple. Basically, all the important parts of Ezekiel already. However, I could have ascertained that the same way I just described. You see what I'm saying? And so that is the language of the Bible. They want you to think, what does this mean? But in this particular chapter, God actually explains through the prophet Ezekiel in the story what it's referring to. So it'd be interesting to see somebody, if I stopped there and said, hey, if they paused and say, what's this guy talking about? How do you know that means that? And they think that they're bad and they think they know something. I've actually been reading the Bible on record in videos for quite some time now. I started maybe with the first Bible discussion, maybe 2009, when I was talking about how Christ is not God, but the Son of God. And that the Son is very significant in the Bible, and that many people were using the Bible for sun worship in Rome. Right, the Sol Invictus. I didn't do that great of a job in 2009, but I was basically right about everything. I touch on a little bit more by 2012. Maybe by 2015 or 16, I really start reading the Bible, and by 2017, I start reading it very heavily, okay, for the last 8 years or so. And I'm very familiar with what they're talking about. Remember, I'm not just reading it. I'm saying, what's your counter argument for 8 years straight? And then before that, all the way back 16 years ago, I was doing something similar with a lot less, knowledge of the Bible scriptures. This is key here. More important than me explaining this this chapter to you, is helping you understand that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the cloud at the end of the Bible. I have series about that. No one has a viable counterargument. To help you understand that I've proven that I'm Christ, the idea that Christ is a character is superimposed on in the scriptures. And my logic, my facts, my evidence, the reason that I use is very much connected to this part of Ezekiel. Before I zoomed in on Ezekiel 17, before I knew in the back of my head somewhere, in a pretty effective way, that Ezekiel was specifically told to set forth an allegory and tell it to the Israelites as a parable, and that it was, the translation, there's another translation that says riddle. I described the Bible as a riddle and a jigsaw puzzle, and I pointed to the cartoon characters, the comic book characters, the Riddler and Jigsaw and the Joker. I said their interpretation is a sick joke. It's like a jigsaw. It's like a riddle. That's very key here. Now, the eagle is not just used in Ezekiel, it's used in other parts of the Bible as well. And I'm right to connect the eagle of Zeus. Zeus symbolizes an eagle, but to the eagle of Rome, the eagle of America, and the eagle of Babylon. That is the language of occultists. That is the language of many religious people. Okay? And the language of the Bible, when it's talking about clouds, is a martial art language. I can't stress this enough. Let's just shoot to Isaiah real fast. One of these gentlemen who was gunned down, one of these police officers in Pennsylvania, his name was actually Isaiah, and here I find, this happens very often, I find myself quoting from Isaiah here without thinking about that consciously. So let's go to verse 30. Isaiah 30, verse 30. The Lord will cause people to hear his majestic voice, and will make them see his arm coming down with raging anger and consuming fire with cloud burst. Again, cloud burst, thunderstorm, and hail. So it's this strike, right? The cloud is connected to the strike. It's also connected to a cloud of smoke that the Bible talks about, a cloud of incense. A cloud is a gathering of rain, right, which rains, and the rain is fallen down is said to be the teaching of God. And there's the pure water of the righteous and the muddied water of the wicked. There's in Isaiah, it talks about water, the waves crashing on the beach, and it talks about how their righteousness would be like waves crashing on the beach, and their well-being and their peace, like the waves crashing down on the beach in the water. So I'm very familiar with the language of the Bible. Before I even came across Isaiah 30, I was saying the cloud burst refers to a martial art ending, right? He says, I am, you'll see me coming on the clouds of heaven at the right hand of power, the right hand of the mighty one. It's a martial arts description. And then eventually I come across Isaiah 30. I read it again, and finally I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly proving my point. And then I put that on my car, and I quote it quite often. Okay. So now let's see what they're saying here. Okay. Then the word of the Lord came to me, say to this rebellious people, do you not know what these things mean? Say to them, the king of Babylon went to Jerusalem and carried off her king and her nobles, bringing them back with him to Babylon. It's like I've been saying to people, I'm with all your churches, 380,000 churches, 20,000 denominations. Do you not understand the Bible enough to rally to me the first time? Many of you know that I'm here. Do you not understand what the scripture is telling you? It's telling you obey God through me, or you're an idiot, you're a fool, you're a monster. Folly's in the heart of a child, right? Folly is an unruly woman. You're like an unruly female and a little kid. They do not know what these things mean. And God is saying that too through the prophet Ezekiel. He's inspired him to say it. His spirit is causing him to say it. And he says, do you not know what these things mean? The king of Babylon went to Jerusalem and carried off her king and her nobles. Right? That shoot, the topmost shoot, right? The king and the nobles. So the eagle carrying off the topmost shoot, bringing them back with him to Babylon, to a land of merchants. Then he took a member of the royal family and made a treaty with him, putting him under oath. He also carried away the leading men of the land, so that the kingdom would be brought low, unable to rise again, surviving only by keeping his treaty. But the king rebelled against him by sending his envoys to Egypt, to get horses and a large army. Will he succeed? Will he who does such things escape? Will he break the treaty and yet escape? As surely as I live, declares the Lord, he shall die in Babylon, in the land of the king who put him on the throne, whose oath he despised and whose treaty he broke. Now he's not mad that they broke the treaty with Babylon. Okay, by itself at least. He's mad because the prophets are telling them to surrender to Babylon. Okay, and to treat the Babylonians fairly. And they, some of them don't want to do that, and we see that in Isaiah. We see that alluded to, at least, in Jeremiah. I can't remember to a T what he talks about there, but Jeremiah ends with Babylon being struck partially for what it did to Israel. At some point, the Babylonians are going to punish the people of Israel. So God deliberately told the people of Israel to go to Babylon, okay, because he knew that they would do things in a way that would cause them to be punished. And that the Babylonians would punish them. And then, just like with the Assyrians, he would punish the Babylonians. And so it is with the whole planet. The righteous, who the Jews are superimposed on the story, are kind of scattered throughout the planet historically. And the whole world does them wrong. No matter what country you are in the world, they don't honor God. And so in Isaiah 24 and Isaiah 34, the whole world sinks, never to rise again. So anyway, so let's just wrap this up here. I'm going over time. Okay. Okay, so he says, but the king rebelled against him by sending his envoys to Egypt to get horses and a large army. Will he succeed? Will he who does such things escape? Will he break the treaty and yet escape? As surely as I live, declares the Lord, he shall die in Babylon, in the land of the king who put him on the throne, whose oath he despised and whose treaty he broke. Pharaoh with his mighty army and great horde will be of no help to him in war, when ramps are built and siege works erected to destroy many lives. He despised the oath by breaking the covenant, because he had given his hand in pledge, and yet did these things. He shall not escape. Let's stop for a second here. I want to clarify what I said before. When I say the Jews are superimposed on the righteous, the Jews who are going to go to heaven in the story, okay? So whoever these people are that the story's talking about, because there's a lot of confusion in regards to who the Jews are, and there's a lot of fabricated evidence, okay? It's not so important, okay? What I meant was the people who go to heaven, right? Galatians 3:28, there's no Jew or Gentile, it's just those who obey Christ. So it's saying that in the midst of the world, we're righteous people in another group of people. And the other people in the group of people are like Cain, and the righteous are like Abel, and they're being cut off. Just like Cain was punished, and Abel was taken away to be spared from evil. And that was like the model for the world. And then you see it continue all the way through, John the Baptist and Christ and Stephen the Martyr. That's the model. We see that in Revelation, right? They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that these people should be dumb enough to persecute me because I'm Christ and this is the end of the story. So if you're a Satanist, God commands you, and there'll be hell to pay if you don't obey God, to compensate me, to stop persecuting me, okay, and to tell the truth about things. Because there's also a critical mass of Satanists in this world. Why on earth would they think it's a good idea to persecute me? It's not like all the masses of Satanists would follow me. There's far too many racists and traditionalists and fanatic feminists and this, that, and the other thing, MAGA fans. There's far too many idiots for them to be concerned that everyone would just follow me, and that's that. And if everyone would just follow me, that's an improvement on how things are going now, for example, in this trajectory. Okay. He despised the oath by breaking the covenant because he had given his hand in pledge and yet did all these things. He shall not escape. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says: as surely as I live, I will repay him for despising my oath and breaking my covenant. See that? He's mad because he broke the oath that they made with Babylon on behalf of God. So it's also an oath with God. So I will spread my net for him, and he will be caught in my snare. I'll bring him to Babylon and execute judgment on him there because he was unfaithful to me. All his choice troops will fall by the sword, and the survivors will be scattered to the winds. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken. This is what the sovereign Lord says: I myself will take a shoot from the very top of a cedar and plant it. I will break off a tender sprig from its topmost shoots and plant it on a high and lofty mountain. On the mountain heights of Israel I will plant it. I will produce branches and bear fruit and become... It will produce branches and bear fruit and become a splendid cedar. And we'll get to that later on, in the Ezekiel 31 or so, when it talks about Pharaoh as a cedar, when it talks about Assyria. That'll be interesting there. Birds of every kind will nest in it. They will find shelter in the shade of its branches. All the trees of the forest will know that I, the Lord, bring down the tall tree and make the low tree grow tall. I dry up the green tree and make the dry tree flourish. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it. This also connects to Luke 23, where Christ, as a character in the story, says, if this is what happens when the vine is green, or when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry and withered? It says, I dry up the green tree and make the dry tree flourish. So those who are righteous on the planet, who are suffering with the wicked, are seen as like a dry tree that God removes and makes flourish in the spiritual realm. Galatians 4, right? Jerusalem in the sky, right? We see in Ezekiel, I believe it talks about you who dwell in the heavens, or maybe it's Revelation. No, I think it's Revelation 18. It says, you who dwell in the heavens rejoice. But woe to those who live on the earth, right? Those who are in the spiritual realm in the heavens, those who skywalk, right? The skywalker rejoice, the ground-hugging snake and the jackals, right? That they're in trouble because the devil's thrown down. Again, they're not supposed to persecute me according to their own script, which occultists follow too. When they define themselves as Satanists, where do they get the idea of Satan? From the Bible almost completely, right? So it's stupid for them to think that they should define themselves as a demon that oversteps the boundaries of the characteristics and definition of that devil or demon. It's pretty straightforward, right? So they're like making it personal with me for no reason. They're not completing their satanic role-playing game. They're just pissing off God in reality more and pissing me off more, okay, on a planet that is in orbit around the sun, where, just a slight deviation of things, just a slight adjustment would wipe out life on this planet. Okay, and that's just that part of it. the odds of living, the odds of life existing in the first place, right? The idea of irreducible complexity and other ideas make it clear that it is insane to think that this all happened on a fluke. Just crazy, crazy, crazy. So you see here where God is saying that he's going to take the best people of the survivors on the planet. Okay, because eventually, because of Christ, right, the Gentiles get grafted in, as they say. So what are the top shoots? Okay, who are the true kings and nobles? Well, it's in Proverbs 16, 10 through 12. Right, a divine verdict is on the actions on the mouth of the king, right? And God detests dishonest scales, and the throne is established in righteousness. New Living Translation, justice. That's Proverbs 16:12, one of my favorite scriptures in the whole Bible. When I came across that, I was like, that's the scripture I'm looking for, to make it clear to these damn racist Jews, these damn white supremacists, these damn token minorities, and what have you, make it clear to people who are just ignorant, that the true king isn't somebody who's in your church or this, who actually bears fruit, who actually has the works and the deeds. Like my top martial arts challenge, I've been making the argument since like 2000, I don't want to say 13, 14, where I said, that I've actually proven that I convey spiritual power. No one in the churches has. I convey righteous intensity. If the Lord is known and exalted by his acts of righteousness, how much is the top martial artist known, or the leader among humanity? How much more when you can see him, and you people need to see things quite often to believe it. You can see me, you can see the righteousness being conveyed. So I was like, look, obviously I'm supposed to lead. And they didn't have the heart and the honor and the self-respect and the dignity and the wisdom and the insight and the sense to follow the one God set apart, like you see in John 10. Thank you.